Baby boomers can work in an organization 10, 20 years before they hit the boiling point. But the Gen Zs are like 10, 20 days, done. My boss don't like me, my boss don't appreciate me, I'm out of here. It's no longer about an experience that a trainer has. Now the participants are looking for how the trainer felt during their experience. Sometimes in the corporate world, participants were forced to attend. Today is Rep Jam. What time can we go off? It's no longer a time about what the organization wants the participants to learn, but rather how the organization is going to convince the participants they need to learn it. The fish will start rotting from the head and then it will spread all the way down. Just like any organization, the rot of an organization starts from the head. L&D needs to think about, how do I put my whole company, all the people there, into environments that helps the organizational productivity growth? Not just, I need to run 18 programs this year.
We do this for HR individuals. So basically, everyone who's trying to build better organizations, help individuals in their journey to build better organizations and deliver value to clients. I wanted to take some time with you to look at what you do. And maybe we can start by asking you how you currently introduce yourself and your business.
Hi, my name is Soo Hoo. I help trainers to get into the training industry in Malaysia faster and better by upskilling and mentoring them. One of the main things we do is sometimes we call it a polishing school or acting school. We train the actors, we train the K-pop artists to prepare them for the industry.
Wow. You have different audiences. You have artists and also business professionals.
Correct. Our primary business is to train up the trainers and prepare them for the industry. So we partner together with our training providers, we partner together with our clients to understand their needs. Like, is there a way we can do hybrid effectively? Is there a way we can do blended learning differently? So we work together to figure out the best solution that they need. And then we train up trainers to be able to deliver that solution as well.
Okay, super interesting. And when did the acting and the facilitation came into your life? Because you studied law and then you went into finance. How did this happen?
I studied law, but while I was reading law, I already joined the bank as a salesperson. And at the age of 25, I decided to leave the working world and start my own business. I lost it all over a couple of years and went into depression, went into a lot of financial challenges as well. And finally, as I came out from all of that, I asked myself, what do I really want to do for the rest of my life? And I decided that it is my personal mission to try and help as many people avoid having to go through that. I came into the training world from there and started in public programs at first, but I realized that corporate is where most of the action is in Malaysia, right? I came to corporate training, a very different world from public programs. In public programs, individuals are paying us directly to come into our training. I find that participants are very active. They're really squeezing every ounce of knowledge, experience, and sharing that we can have for them. And when I came to the corporate world, it was a very different market. The first question I ever got as a trainer in a training room before I even started on the topic was, Soo Hoo, today is Rep Jam. What time can we go off? And that came as a bit of a culture shock because I realized sometimes in the corporate world, participants were forced to attend. It made me want to explore what are the ways I can figure out how to get the participants to want to stay longer. So we started looking into experiential learning. We started looking into gamification of things, putting up costume training programs and thematic play in the training room, a lot more storytelling, sometimes even more of a stand-up comedy, just to drive the message across and engage participants and keep them locked into the training. As that grew, I started bringing in mentees. I started bringing in second line of trainers who can do the same. Now we have grown to more than 5 levels deep. So my trainers and my mentees are now mentoring other trainers on how they can deliver higher quality training in Malaysia.
That's amazing. Did you have any background or what were your hobbies? Any background in comedy or in this kind of thing? Or?
No.
Zero?
Yeah, zero. In fact, I'm super introverted to a point that I have a slight social anxiety, but it was a message, it was a passion. My team and I, we share a common goal, a common purpose of impacting the lives of 100 million people. And we call it our 100 Million Lives project. So there was no practice in comedy. In fact, I'm not a very humorous person. But when we need to do what it takes to get the participants engaged, we will do what it takes. I've had team members who had to train when they were very sick. I had one trainer check himself into the hospital because he had irregular heart palpitation the night before, took a 6-hour off from the hospital, went and ran his class with the needle still in his hand, went back to the hospital after the class. I had to train for 4 days from the funeral parlor of my father's funeral because the class was still going on. For us, it is a heavy commitment. So if you have to learn how to do stand-up comedy, we will. If you have to learn how to do theater training programs, then we will do that. I have been blessed with many good mentors. Clinton Swain is a very good mentor. He taught me a lot in terms of costume programs and gamification of things, experiential learning. Nelly is retired now. She's an amazing mentor who kind of like foresaw what Malaysian training is supposed to be. And she saw it back about 15, 20 years ago. She's already embarked on this journey, but very much ahead of her time. She started building modular programs, 2 to 4 hour programs 20 years ago. And she's trained us to build programs that way. Back then, most trainers were building 2-day programs and 3-day programs. And so we've been building our programs modular fashion. And today, we find a lot of clients asking for modular programs, right? We were using QR codes back in 2012 when there were no QR code readers yet.
So you had to get people to download the readers so that we could...
Yeah. And I told her, I think this is a very stupid idea because I spent about like 15, 20 minutes to convince people to download a QR code reader and nobody has a QR code reader. And then like, what are they going to do with it? But today, everybody is using a QR code reader.
I remember those days. Yeah, I was also getting people to download the app. Cool. If you had to share, like, what is the driving insights at the core of how you teach how to facilitate, what would be the top 3 or even like the top 1 if you think it's just 1 is enough?
Now, it's no longer about the knowledge and experience that a trainer has. I think now the participants are looking for how the trainer felt during their experience, because those are the things that they cannot ChatGPT and they cannot get AI to answer. They don't want to understand the how anymore. They want to understand what went through the person's mind and how the person felt and what made the person get through it. I think that's what a lot of new participants, especially the Gen Zs, are looking for today. In terms of training delivery, I think it's no longer a time about what the organization wants the participants to learn, but rather how the organization is going to convince the participants they need to learn it. Participants are more willing today to learn than before. The world is slowly shifting to a very much self-paced, self-initiated program.
What's your recommendation to HR folks who are putting together their L&D programs and want to improve them?
The Gen Zs are now looking for a reason why they need to attend certain training programs or why they want to stay. So training is one of the reasons why they want to stay, because they want to learn, they want to grow, but they want to do it at their own, sort of their own time, at their own pace. Let's say we'd say problem solving and decision making. In the past, a trainer and an L&D will come together and say, okay, we need a problem solving and decision making program. And I'm going to put 15 people into this program. Today, L&D and clients are not looking at the problem-solving decision-making as a whole. They may need one short segment, 2 hours to 4 hours on identifying root cause of problem, on generating ideas for problems. They may need another 2 or 3 hours on selecting the right ideas, on generating the criteria to measure the ideas, for example. Total, it can be an 8-hour class that used to be a 1 day, but participants are not going to attend all 4 if they don't need all 4. A lot of L&D are probably going to be looking at their annual calendar and how can they create short mini courses, 2 to 4 hour courses spread out over a year for participants or for management to pick and choose for their team to attend. Within the next 3 years, I think that's going to be the way training is going to be done. But a lot of people also ask me, so how am I going to make sure it's effective? It's where the LMSs are coming in, the learning management systems that are able to track the learning progress of a person and the application of the learning for that person. We can leverage on learning management systems to track the pre and post behavior. We can use the LMS to track the pre and post knowledge. And of course, we can impose daily application activities and action steps for the learners over the next, say, 20 or 30 days for them to practice and use the skill that they have learned. So a 2-hour class or 4-hour class will be just as effective because they are having continuous learning after that is trained, that is supported by AI through the LMS or through tools that we can deploy.
How do you discover what are the training needs organizationally and then for each individual?
From a L&D perspective, they still have to do the organization TNA based on the needs of the organization rather than an individual.
What is TNA?
The trainings analysis. But I think the individuals will and should have the final say as to what they want to attend. In the past, we built up the career path for an individual. When you join, you start with an executive, you move up to senior executive and so forth and so on. Along the path between an executive to a senior executive, these are the 5 key competency that you need to demonstrate. And in these 5 key competency, you need to demonstrate it to this level of expectation. And in our annual calendar, we will have the training programs that covers these 5 competency. Now, it's up to the individual when they want to attend and which they want to attend. Once they complete the 5 competency, they qualify to be evaluated or assessed by HR or by the management team if they should be promoted. Assuming they qualify to be promoted and there's no position open yet, they will be the first pool of people that will be offered the position when the position becomes available later. This allows the training to move from the L&D department to the individual. And that empowerment makes the Gen Z see their career progression, see their learning opportunity within an organization.
Okay.
In fact, at a national level, we should be looking at a similar structure for this. So one of the things that we're looking at the national level should be, let's say, for example, we have candidate A and let's call him Adam. And Adam works in ABC company. While he was working in ABC company, he attended 3 training programs that upskilled him. When he moves to 123 company, he should be able to carry with him certifications that say he's qualified for those skills that he was with. This sort of national skills passport has been mooted by JPK, has been mooted by HRDC. And I think that should be the way going forward, where a participant, an individual in Malaysia, gets their training recognized regardless of which organization they have gone to. Of course, on the other side is we have to ensure the quality of training delivery is consistent across the board. But I think this kind of skills passport, national skills passport, is something that the nation is or should be looking at.
Okay. So basically, you do the training analysis, you define the menu for the organization, and then you let people pick.
Yep. That will be how the Gen Zs will prefer their learning to be.
Okay. You talk about immersive learning and development. What do you mean by that?
Some of our training programs are fully thematic. If you attend our program called, let's pick one, Coliseum Commerce, for example. It's a game based on a game that is set in the ancient Roman days. So the facilitators, the participants, they are in full costume. The learning activities based on that time period, they'll exchange in denaries. They will be building products around that time period as well. Another activity could be Into the Skies. Into the Skies is based on World War II. So the facilitators and participants sometimes generally not in costumes, but facilitators are always in costume and in character. It puts the participants in an environment that is not the usual work, which allows their creativity and allows their fun and play to come out.
How do you manage the objections from clients if they tell you it's not professional or it's too, I don't know what they could say, goofy? How do you address that kind of objection?
Usually we offer them 2 options to go with it or not. So far, we have to turn down more clients than the other way around. And the reason why we have to turn down clients is it's not because we have to turn them down, but because we have to turn down their offer for budget. In order for us to go into full thematic, our facilitators have the number of facilitators required is easily double or triple that per room, because one facilitator cannot play 2 roles, right? If they're acting as one character, they cannot immediately switch to another character. So far, we have more requests for it than not.
Got it. You spoke about a few things earlier. You spoke about thematic play. This is what you just spoke about now. Gamification, experience design, storytelling, theater training, stand-up comedy. Do you use this for every training or you pick and choose from different tools?
I pick and choose from different tools depending on what's required. Nowadays, we have started to look at blended learning on a hybrid perspective. Some participants are in person, some participants are online. So a lot of the theater programs can't run in that manner. We have to blend different styles of delivery for different clients.
I read you talking about catalyst of change, being a catalyst of change. What change do you want to see in the world? And like, what's your vision for the future of work and maybe the future of training?
The future of work, first of all, will be a very geek-driven world. When I was head of training in one of my clients' organization, I was actually a consultant acting as a head of training. There was no official title because you're either a consultant or you're not. In today's world, you have a fractional CHRO where you are working for one client as a fraction of your time and you're working with another client for a fraction of your time. That was something that was never accepted in the past. Effectively, if you look at it, that's a gig. That was what I was doing as a consultant. You're effectively a consultant for one client for a fraction of a time, and you're a consultant for another client for a fraction of a time. I believe with the demand from the younger generation for flexible time, for result-based measures, I think it's just within the next 2 or 3 years where you're going to see more requests for gigs rather than traditional employment roles. In terms of training, there's going to be a lot more self-driven initiatives, I feel, either by employees or individuals that are going to be signing up for programs on their own. I'm starting to see some individuals requesting for their own leadership development program and they're paying for it on their own basis rather than waiting for the company to send them for training. That is going to come. But I'm also seeing training program to be shortened to 2 hours, maximum 4 hours, which is going to change a lot of how things are done currently. I'm going to see clients requesting for a behavioral change measurement, level 3, or even result-based measurement, level 4 of Kirkpatrick, rather than like current, just give me multiple choice, 10 multiple choice, pre and post, and we'll call it a day. Days of this kind of training is going to be phased out eventually. I'm also seeing a lot of mobile-based learning where participants are going to be learning on their mobile before they come to class. So it's going to be very blended. It's going to be very mobile-driven. Participants are going to learn beforehand. And when they come to class, when they come to the training, it's about how do I apply that? How do I overcome this challenge when I apply it? I think that's where it's going to be moving to. A lot more coaching on application rather than one-directional lecturing, which a lot of trainers are still doing locally.
So if you do multi-directional and you get people to actually make more effort, quality of the rating would drop because they tend to experience more difficulty. And when you experience more difficulty, although the topic stays longer in your mind, you remember it better, your feedback to the trainer might be less good than of a bad trainer. How do you circumvent this in your own work at the moment?
That's why I say I think we are going to be looking at level 3 or level 4 Kirkpatrick measurement rather than level 1 measurement. So participants may not enjoy, but if they have good progress at their work, eventually they're going to give good feedback. And for HR and for management, they want the result and they want the behavioral change more than they want a participant that feels happy at the end of the day. I think that is one of the biggest challenge in local training environment. A lot of trainers are still measured based on the training effectiveness evaluation, which is a level 1 Kirkpatrick. How happy do you feel at the end of the program? And it's so easy to trick that measurement. Make sure they have very good food. Make sure I'm eating with them eating with different people at every meal break so that they feel a sense of rapport, a sense of connection. They feel a bit shy. I don't want to give you a bad rating because I know you, right? And then you get good ratings. It's not that hard. But what I'm more challenged by and what I foresee is how can I create real impact in that organization, even if it means the participants may not like the process of growth, right? How do I challenge the participant to embrace the change in the behavior? How do I create an environment after the training where participants are still using the skills that they have gained in the training program so that we can measure, okay, have they applied it in the 90 days after the training or not? Yeah.
Very good. Very interesting. I guess it's going in that direction, but I still want to ask you, if you summarize your life to one question, what would it be?
How can I make it better?
Okay. Always improving. Kaizen.
That's the meaning of life, right? We have to be growing or we will be dying.
In the context of learning and development, what answer do you give it to at the moment? what answer do you give it to? Apart from the things we talked about already, what do you think is a key element to make it better, make better L&D?
Right now, another challenge in Malaysian L&D scene is this. We have too many layers between the stakeholder and the trainer. The stakeholder, let's say, for example, needs leadership program. The supervisor decides, okay, I agree. I think I'm going to send you to leadership program. The supervisor will then talk to HR and HR say, okay, we'll organize a leadership program. The HR will then talk to training provider and say, okay, we'll organize a leadership program for you. And the training provider then tells the trainer, okay, you need to go in and run a leadership program. It's like the Chinese whispers, or in Malaysia, we call it radio bureau or broken telephone, right? It's one messaging passing to another message. And we are going through so many different layers to get to the issue. By the time the trainer goes in the training room, what he was told is required by participants can be completely different. And now you compound that by 20 different participants in a training room. That is a challenge. What needs to be made better will be the accessibility of the trainer with the direct stakeholders to figure out how we can tweak the program in order to achieve what the participants really need before we go into the training room. Right now, by the time the trainer is aware of what the participant really wants and needs, it is during the training. Usually by the first tea break, a good trainer will have a feel what the participants really want. And then we have to talk to our training providers and clients. Hey, Mr. HR, your clients really wanted this, but your training brief asked for this. Am I able to swap the contents around? Usually HR will say yes, but by that time, it's usually the first tea break, right, in the morning. Why do we have to do that when we can actually get a feel of everything before the program even started and really tweak the program and customize the program exactly as what the participants want, not what the HR says they want or what the training provider says they want or what their supervisor says they want. Maybe the supervisor is important, but the participant is equally important to get them involved in the training. We should do away with all the forcing of participants to attend. I'll give you another example. Sometimes a client may have only 6 or 7 people that needs the training. But because they have paid for the training, they will want to put everyone in. And they squeeze the room up to 20, 30 people, half of which or more than half of which don't even want to be in the room.
Yeah.
I don't think it's doing justice for the people who need that training when you're forcing the others to be in there. So I think that needs to change.
I love it. I mean, based on what you say, even if you wanted to put, let's say that you want to reduce the cost per participant, you invite more people so that the cost per participant is less. If you follow the methodology you said, where you involve all the stakeholders, even those guys who might not be fully aligned at first,
Correct.
you might find a way to involve them in a way that would be useful. Yeah.
I had one client. It was a high potential future leaders program. 8 of them were identified as potential future leaders. But the client decided to put 32 people into that training room. Now, if you do the maths, you're talking about 24 people who don't want to be there, forced to be there. Now, how do I know they don't want to be there? First of all, they're not participative. Second of all, the HR have to announce their name at 9 o'clock in the morning to remind them to go for training. And the HR, every single break, had to come by and check to make sure they're in the room. And they were so toxic in the training room because they don't want to be there. This kind of training shouldn't. You have 8 people who are busy scribbling down notes, they're participating, they're learning, but you have 24 other people who's dragging them down because they don't want to be there.
How do you balance the in-class training or the in-class experience that you design where people pay you basically because there's a deliverable, a tangible product to buy? How do you balance this effort with the effort of before and after, which is so important in the actual training delivery and making sure you engage participants throughout to the level 4 of Kilpatrick?
You should be looking at not just the in-room training to be billable. Clients can actually pay us. They shouldn't pay us. They should invest in learning design. They should invest in training materials. They should invest in post-program. A lot of LMS today, the learning management systems today, are able to capture behavioral and action steps. So let's say, for example, I run a communication program. And I design maybe 10 days, the participant need to use different methodology of communication. And I put it into the learning management system whereby when they apply it, they and their supervisor will check into the learning management system. Over 10 days, we re-look at the behavioral change. Now, if a person is applying new skills every day for 10 days, their behavior is going to change. Maybe not 10, we will do 20, we can do 30 days. In the past, it requires a trainer to be physically present and checking. But now with learning management systems, we can use the systems to check. That allows the behavioral change to happen without the physical trainer being in the room. But it does require the trainer to tweak and adjust the pre and post. So let's say, for example, we do a 5-minute reading. For 10 days, that's about 50 minutes. And after every reading, there is an action step that they need to do. They need to go and talk to the supervisor about certain things, right? And they check in after they do it. The supervisor checks in after they do it. If they do this over 10 days, you have a 50-minute, or you can do it over 12 days to make it 60 minutes, an hour. An hour is claimable in HRDC also as an online program. So that allows the clients to also be able to pay for that component. Now, the time it requires a trainer to build all of that can be compensated fairly. That's a good way to balance it. A lot of trainers are asking for, I want to be paid more, I want to be paid more, I want to be paid more. But what tangible value are you giving to your client? Clients today no longer want to see just a training effectiveness evaluation. They don't just want to see multiple choice question. They're looking for 3 things. Number 1, how are you going to measure results? Because they want measurable results. Number 2, they want demonstrable result. Not only must they be able to measure it, they must be able to show their management, they must be able to demonstrate to the management that there is result from this investment.
Yeah.
Number 3, they want the investment, the results to be repeatable. Because what good is a training where the participants are able to demonstrate it in class, but after class they cannot repeat the same result? So they want measurable, demonstrable, and repeatable results. How can trainers design programs that is able to deliver this? I think that's what is also missing in the industry.
What's one belief you had about learning and development that changed your mind about?
I used to believe that two-way, multi-way training is the way until I started training certification and hypnosis. There is no way we can go andragogy method, two-way communication, facilitation, unless we started with some lecture. And that made me relook at there are topics that requires a one-directional training. I started my career in, Soo Hoo, we must be two-directional, we must always be interactive. Interactive is good, but in terms of knowledge, the facilitative belief that participants have the knowledge of the content already only works in soft skills environment. Imagine if I'm teaching scaffolding, for example, and I want to do it interactive, good. If I want to do it two-directional, facilitative, let's draw from the participant what they understand about scaffolding. And I say, okay, look, you have seen a scaffolding, right? Okay, imagine a scaffolding. Now I want to imagine how a scaffolding look like. Let's build a scaffolding. Okay, now climb up and see. Oh, you fell down. What did you learn from that? We can't do it that way, right? So there are topics that needs to be one-directional, very pedagogical, and that's the belief that has changed.
So you thought everything should be two-way, and then you figured out some things need to be one-directional.
Yeah, I used to think that everything was two-way. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. You spoke about your experience and what led you to do this, so it makes sense in hindsight. But why this fascination for learning and development?
When I first started out, actually, it was really by accident and not really by choice. After losing my business, I went into direct selling. I went to a lot of different things. NLP and training got me through the problems at that time, a lot of the depression and a lot of those mental issues at that time. And because of that, I had opportunities to start training my network marketing team and my friends' network marketing teams. And because of those opportunities, then it became more and more interesting for me. I quit my job to start my own business. I quit one boss to be a boss. And then when I lost the business, I went to network marketing. And as my network grew, I had more bosses. The more my network grew, the more bosses I seem to have. That's contrary to what I wanted. So when I looked at that, I told my wife, that's not something I want to do, and I want to do something else. And I want to become a trainer. But I was still considering between the two, not sure what I should be pursuing. Because network marketing was having very good traction and very good income, but training was just starting out. It wasn't easy.
Why made you start? Because you say, I started training, but why this what was the little sparkle?
The little sparkle was actually finding that I can do it and I can help people, and I find joy in helping the participant in the room. But The turning point actually came one day when I was at a church, a random church I walked into. There was a pastor who was visiting the church, and his core message for the day is the purpose of life is to uncover the seed of human potential. When I heard that message, it really struck something in my heart, and I thought, I think that is what God wants me to do, and that's what I should be doing. So I went home and told my wife, the network marketing business, you can handle it. I want to become a trainer. Then I became a trainer.
That's a beautiful story. Why don't you share it more upfront? Why do I need to dig?
Actually, it struck my mind that I have not shared this part of the story for many years.
How come?
I don't know. And I really have to thank you to pick that out.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's like you make it look like it's a series of coincidences, but that moment seems to be quite important. You have NLP as well. So the NLP is a way to format your mind of like a engineering of how you think. So I guess there's something about transmitting this as well. Really interesting. If you look like just beyond training, because when you're called to like an organization, I imagine there's a conversation about going from one performance level to another performance level. As a learning and development expert, what separates okay teams or good teams from really high performing teams? Have you seen some patterns, and how do these patterns show in the learning and development ecosystem you have? Can you see also those patterns in the students themselves when they come in the room? What is your advice to organizations, but also people coming in the room to model the right behavior in the training so that they get the most out of the training?
One of the most common thing I've been seeing in terms of performance is commitment and ownership. And it's very hand in hand. If I don't have ownership, why should I be committed? From an employee perspective, there's a lot of demand for them to be committed to have ownership, but they don't have physical ownership over the organization. And many of them, sometimes when we interview for something, we may see that our skill sets can do it. We may try and do it, but very often in Malaysia, we also have this any clause you can do and anything else your management asks you to do kind of clause, right? I think this balance pushes a lot of employees, especially the Gen Z, into uncharted and unknown territories for them. In a place where I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, I'd rather not do anything. Then organizations or management start to feel like, hey, maybe they're not committed enough, they need to have more commitment and so forth. But I believe, just like fish, right? If anybody ever buys fish, we always check the gill, we check the eye for freshness. The reason why we check the gill and check the eye is because fish rots from the head. We never check the tail for freshness. The fish will start rotting from the head and then it will spread all the way down. Just like in any organization, the rot of an organization starts from the head. If the bosses are not committed, how will you expect the middle management to be committed? If the middle management is not committed, how do you expect the employees to be committed? And it cascades downwards. If I own an organization, I may be 100% committed, but my level 1 may be only 90 or 80% committed because they don't own the organization. How do I create an environment for my level 1 to feel that commitment? I had one client, every conversation with them, when they refer to someone else in the senior management, they always refer by their position in the family tree. Oh, you need to talk to the boss's son. You need to talk to the MD's daughter. You need to talk to the CEO's cousin. Instead of referring to them as individuals, they're referring to them as in their family tree. And the ironic thing about them is, Soo Hoo, how do I work on this ownership issue? I said, you can't. Because your entire conversation, you talk about you want to have ownership, but your entire conversation refers to the owners of the organization. You don't refer to them even by their position in the organization. You don't even refer to them by name. You refer to them in their position in the family tree. Unconsciously, what are you conveying to your team? If you're not part of the family, you will not own the company. And if I don't feel like I've got a say, I don't have any connection to the organization, then I'll just do what I need to do.
Thank you for that. I think you're giving too many insights. I was going to interrupt you for the first one you gave, which is chicken and egg problem. It's like, if you don't give ownership, you won't get commitments. And if you don't get commitment, you don't want to give ownership. So what you say is give ownership first?
I say give ownership to your employees, and then they'll give you a commitment. And ownership doesn't have to come from shares in the organization. It can come from feeling that they belong in that organization, that their opinion matters in the organization. There's a case study with hired electronic company. They had this run. They decided that at one point they became so big, so bureaucratic that things were not as efficient as it was before. So they decided to fire all the employees and rehire them under micro organizations. So they are like a huge collective of micro organizations that is working with each other in synchronicity.
Yep.
And that transfers the ownership of the department to the department itself. Now you're in charge of your own profit and loss. What will you do in this environment? If switching off the light will cause your bonus to be reduced, will you leave the light on when you're not there, or will you switch it off? I think that's a beautiful case study to look at in terms of decentralizing the ownership. Now, how can we see this happen in today's world? Fractional CHRO or CXOs, one possible way to look at it. In the past, it was never acceptable. Recently, I saw a fractional CEO, which means that this person is CEO of two organizations at the same time, with different time. So why is this mindset and why is this allowed? Because the mindset of people now is more into the results that I'm driving for the organization rather than my time in the organization. Now, if we were to take that and we put it into the participants, into the employee level, can they see themselves as their own business providing result to the organization in exchange for a fee? If you give me this result every month, this is a result I want. I don't care how you do it and when you do it or whichever manner you do it. I want this result, and this is the consulting fee or the gig fee or the income that I'm going to be paying you. I think that is how a lot of employment is going to start to look like in the future.
Very interesting. And when you said you used the fish rotting from the head to the tail, is there a way, so basically the 100% at the bottom, at the tail, it needs to both have 100% at the head and also a way to give full ownership of the people at the tail?
Yes. Actually, that is the reason why I use the analogy of the fish. Because most of the time, the complaint that my team is not committed comes from management. I give them a very simple exercise. I put my hands up and I ask them to raise their hand. So if I raise my hand this way, I see most of participants will also raise their hand this way. I say, now put your hand down. Okay, shake your shoulders up. Now put your right hand up again. And when I do this, most of them will raise it lower, right? So now what was the difference? As the person that you're seeing, when my hand was straight up, your hand was straight up, which means that if I give my 100% commitment, you're going to give 100% as well. But if I give 80, you're going to give 70 or 60. If I give 50, you're going to give 30. And it's going to cascade from the top down, which means in terms of ownership and commitment is going to cascade, and it's going to get lesser and lesser the lower I go because of mental ownership of the organization. The company will listen to the CEO, the company will listen to the heads of department, but how many companies are actually listening to the employees and the supervisors and the operators and the clerks? The more an organization listens to the people, the more the people will feel they have an ownership, a sense of ownership in the organization. And that will change how the organization is going to grow.
I imagine that's the answer to my next question. When an entire organization is underperforming, where do you start? Ownership?
I always look at commitment and ownership, yes.
Okay. And so when you were talking about this, you do this as a workshop. So you basically teach commitment and ownership.
Yeah, we have several activities, including a game called The Great Escape. Great Escape is a very simple game. People just have to move from one end of the room to another end of the room within a set duration of time. This game can go on anywhere between an hour to up to 4 hours, because the way for the participants to win the game is for them to completely commit to their own role in the movement. So you find a lot of people have self-realization. Am I truly giving 100%? I always say I give 100%, but in the game, am I giving 100% or am I giving less? It's always interesting to see numerically the number of people who fail every time we play this game corresponds with the people who give 80% or less. It may not be the same people, but the number of people who give 80% or less in this game tend to correspond with the number of people who fail to complete in this game. So it lets the participants realize that every time I say I'm committed, am I truly committed? Am I truly committed every single day to my work, to my results? Or have I started to allow excuses and justifications to come in? Have I started to allow the normal way of how things are done come into my life? They also self-reflect a lot about, if I'm always thinking about a shortcut, You know how people in a training game, right? They're always thinking, what is the secret? What is a way to get around it? What's a shortcut? In my looking for shortcut, am I neglecting my core work, which is to give my 100%? They self-reflect a lot of different commitment issue.
I'm actually self-reflecting. I have to share because it's burning me. I'm thinking that I'm usually not 100% in games. I'm like, it's not real life. I don't want to play. If you put me into a room escape or those kind of, I'm like, oh God, it's not real life. I'm out, you know? I was thinking about the fact that I'm always like that, but people might be experiencing the real game of life as something that is not for them.
What we do is, you always remember as an Asian perspective, we are willing to do more for others than we are to do for ourselves. So let's say, for example, in you not committing, your team members will lose. It will make you do more because you don't want your team members to lose. Very regular mindset. If it's up to me, hey, it's not real life, I'm not going to give my 100%. But if I don't give my 100%, my team will lose. If my team lose, they have to keep doing it. So I better give my 100%.
So that's how you motivate people to take part in the game is don't make your team lose.
Correct. So when they do that, the whole team do better.
So it's actually good because then you explain the reason why this kind of training, thematic, and basically that's the way it works. That's creating the gamification. You understand the concept of commitment, that without the social engineering of the game and the learning and development experience you do would not be happening because people will be like, I don't care.
Correct. And the other reason why we do it thematic is so that they don't bring in their usual thought patterns into the game. That's one. And two, they don't take it so personally sometimes, especially with the facilitators who may have to give them very harsh feedback. Yeah.
Super. That's super interesting. What's the hardest part when so we talked about underperforming to performing. We talked about commitment and ownership. What about people who commit to a new level of performance? Do you sustain it over time?
The challenge with a lot of organization, a lot of leaders, is that we stop looking at our performers and we unconsciously allow them to slow down. They're already performing, so we give them more tasks and more responsibilities and we allow them to be empowered. Sometimes we fail to see that even though they are performing, they still require the tender loving care from the leaders. That's one of the things that we want to make sure we take note of. In the many organizations I've worked with, I find an unusually large percentage of people who are deemed as uncommitted, deemed as non-performers. When I look at them, I see a large percentage of them used to be high potentials, used to be high performing. Somehow over time, they become what we call in Malaysia old-timers. They are very capable of doing their job, but they're not motivated to do that anymore. So if they're not asked to do something, they won't do, and they just cruise through. It happened in one of the organizations I was with. I had the opportunity to interview them to find out what was going on. And I found out for many of them in that organization, it actually comes from a sense that their contribution no longer matters. It comes from, I used to address it in a very different manner. I used to tell management, look, these guys aren't performing. Make it harder, give them higher KPI, force them to do it. And I realized it wasn't that. I realized it was a lot of lack of a feeling of being acknowledged and being recognized for whatever contribution that they had or whatever contribution that they had done, for whatever thought that they have shared. They are not recognized in the way that they felt recognized. So they just do what it needs to be done.
Not more.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when I interviewed their managers, their supervisors, the supervisors can quote exact example. They see, I did this for them, I did this for them, I did this for them, I did for them, I appreciate them, I did this. But they don't feel it. And that made me go and research a book called The Love Language. And I realized a mismatch of that very often, because love language is about relationship between a couple, right? Between husband and wife, and two person who may or may not feel appreciated by the other person, to love by the other person. And if you take the same concept and apply back at work, that mismatch very often is the underlying reason why a group of people don't feel appreciated, even though the supervisors were trying to show appreciation. And the lack of feeling of being appreciated over time, the experience allows them to know how to do the work well. The appreciation allows them to feel motivated to do the job.
Interesting. I guess it's for people who have more extrinsic motivation, because if you have intrinsic motivation, you don't really care about what people feel. So
yeah. But being in a Southeast Asian culture, most people still require some level of extrinsic motivation, because most of us in Southeast Asia are still a very collective kind of environment, right?
What's the one advice you'd give listeners for them to step into high performance? So not from an organizational standpoint, but as me, like I want to step up my career, I want to be better. What would be the advice?
I would say step out into high performance. Once you hit certain age, energy level is going to change. When you're still young, when you're still able to, don't wait. Just volunteer for any opportunity that comes your way. Give your 100% in everything that you do every day. And by the time you hit in your 40s, your career should be very much more stable. So do it while you're still young.
Thank you. A lot of the things you talked about earlier, there are things that have been known for a while. Many things are not new. I'm not saying that you don't do anything innovative, but gamification and other things it's pretty common now, at least in terms of knowing it. How do you explain most learning and development experiences or most events we go to are still very not interactive, not thematic? Basically, everything you described, most of the places I go to, something like that. How do you explain it?
The challenge I find for the last half a year, I've been trying to talk to my training providers about changing the way things are done. I find the whole industry is still complacent. How I would describe it is, I find that there are a lot of patients who don't know they're sick because everything is still going smooth, okay. But think about it from a policy perspective. The HR minister recently announced that he's going to allow the usage of the HRDC levy to pay as salary to graduates. So what is he saying? He's saying to me that our employers don't feel our graduates deserve the kind of pay that our graduates want. In exchange, I'll allow you to use your levy to pay that. If I were to look at it from a different perspective, why don't we look at the root cause of that problem? The root cause of that problem is, are our graduates, our employees, worth or perceivably worth what we want them to be paid? If they are not, why don't we train them to the level that they are worth? So I think from a policy perspective, these are the kind of things that is happening in Malaysia, which the training industry is not really addressing. We are addressing what is in the checklist of our KPI. We need to run this, we need to run this, we need to run this, let's do it. We are not addressing how are we going to upskill the new hires to a level that the organization feels they're worth. So because of this, I felt a need for myself to go and talk to clients more directly, to go and talk to the end users more and engage with them more. That's why I started becoming more active in LinkedIn after 5-6 years I've not been in LinkedIn, because I think we need to have more of these conversations with clients. I know the clients are asking for this. I know the clients want it, but we don't have the middle ground. We don't have the training providers who's able to provide it. And training providers keep providing the 2-day classes and they keep providing the same product and the same trainers. Clients are like, since there are none in the market, then we go with whatever lah. We'll go with whichever is the cheapest and fulfill on it and can meet the training, so we do lah. And the participants come in, they're not expecting a lot. As long as they can have a good laugh, have a good meal, they learn 1 or 2 things and they're happy and they're done. So I think that mismatch it's actually a huge problem in Malaysia.
I think it's a great opportunity for you. There's a big challenge for everyone, but great opportunity for you. And I don't want to make enemies anywhere, but I think the education, you spoke about education, there is also events, corporate events.
Yeah.
Basically everywhere, the different methodologies or techniques you use could be benefiting all those experiences. Almost looking at it from the community hat that I wear sometimes. When I go to events, it almost feels like we are continuing an existing way of doing things because we don't dare going outside of the norm, and the norm is broken. So it's like I'm afraid myself to do things that are a bit different because I am afraid of how people are going to react. Although I know everything you say is true, I'm afraid that if I'm too out there, people might be feeling uncomfortable or it's going to damage my brand. Basically, it's too risky. So how do you de-risk those decisions that people make to do more of the things you want to bring to the market?
I'll give you an example. The very first time I proposed a game-based program to a client, I wrote there Monopoly, and it was a 2.5-hour game of Monopoly. The client looked at me and said, "Soo, are you serious? How am I going to management?" And said, "We're going to play Monopoly for 2.5 hours. and they're supposed to learn negotiation skills. So I thought about it, and my mentor told me, Soo, just change the name. Don't call it Monopoly. Call it Negotiation for Properties. And coincidentally, the client was a property developer, right? So like, okay, so we gave it a funky name, but the game was still Monopoly. A lot of our clients are having the same issue, especially if you're talking to the manager. Because to the manager, his first care and thought and first priority is his own rice bowl, right? He's not going to try and, are you telling me all my managers are going to dress up in costumes? They're going to wear toga?
Yes.
Oh, do you realize a toga looks like a dress? I think it's a lot of re-education. So on our side, we are recreating a lot of our marketing material. Personally, I felt for the last 5 years, I've been very stagnant. My personal growth in terms of learning and achievement have been very stagnant. We are re-looking at how things are done globally. HRDC, interestingly, is doing a lot to support Malaysian trainers by sending trainers out for global certifications and global exposure. That's a very good direction from HRDC. Most of us don't know what we don't know, so we're delivering the norm. And our clients are worried, so we need to show them a lot of things that can persuade them to try. One is a lot of videos to see, a lot of testimonials to see, a lot of assurance, maybe testing with a smaller program. Let's do a pilot test. Let's do a half day, 1 day, and let them experience how it's like. A combination of this will allow them to give it a try. And just with any change, we're going to see our I customers, like in DISC, let's look for our I. They are the first movers, right? Let's look for them and let's find a small group, 5, 10 of them, and create the social media exposure of it. In fact, this podcast, for example, this interview allows me to share this thought with your community. More people get to hear about it, more people get a look at it, and it's going to happen. Just imagine 2 years ago, if we talk about AI, everybody's so resistant. Clients had firewalls that block AI. But today, it's so prevalent. Even if I cannot access it on the computer in the company, I will use my phone to access it because I need it. And it's getting more and more common. We need to start looking at different ways of doing training because it is going to be the future. And whoever's going to be the first adopters are going to shift that movement. It's just reducing the risk for them to be able to do it.
Thank you for doing that for everyone, including myself. I'm interested in better events. The way I feel about the events we go through is like, because I've went through way more innovative workshops and places. And to me, what strikes me is like, it's almost like a game of mask where we wear the participant mask and the organizer mask. And we need to go through these motions. It's like almost a protocol that everyone has accepted as this is how you train or this is how you do an event. And no one wants to go through it. Like everyone you talk to, every participant, the organizers, the people in the room, no one wants to live this thing. It's like a charade that we have to go through. It's like, please, let's drop the mask and live something else. Anyway, I will tell you my recipe for it. My plan is to give for everything that I will do 2 options. Either you take the red pill or the blue pill kind of thing. One would be like the normal protocol that you've been used to. And the other one, let's do something different and we'll see how it goes. But so far, I've been sticking to what people expect for brand protection, and hopefully I can get more and more creative. A few more questions for you. If you could change one outdated learning and development practice, what would it be?
Only one?
Top 3.
I think the first one would be the 2-day programs. At least I speak from the perspective of Malaysia. In Malaysia, I think that 2 days comes about because of convenience. It's like a marriage of convenience. Clients want to bring people from all over Malaysia to one place. They are not going to fly them in for a half-day class. And a 3-day away from their job is too much. So let's do 2 days. From a training perspective, 2 days I'm claiming by per day, I sell a 2-day program is better than selling a half-day, right? If I can, I want to sell 3-day, but if I agree at 2. So it's like a marriage of convenience. Somebody wants it this way, the other person wants it this way. Participants come for, let's say, in 2 days, let's say a leadership. Maybe I'm very good in leading my team, but I'm not so good in managing EQ. But in a 2-day program, there's leadership, managing EQ, understanding your team, so many different components. I only need 1 of the 5 components, for example. I only need 2 of the 5 components. But I have to fly in for 2 days. I'm only focused on the 2 that I'm weak at, that I really need. I think this coming together is really, truly a marriage of convenience. What changed is the pandemic changed the way training is done. During the pandemic, trainers had to change how we are delivering. We had to go online. Either you go online or you're going to become a Grab driver for a couple of months during the lockdowns, right? So trainers went online. and trainers convince clients that it's still effective. And for large extent, it is. Trainers started to use Mentimeter lah, Kahoot lah, breakout rooms lah, discussion. We changed the kind of games that we are running and made it a little bit more interactive and active. But then post-pandemic, we went back to 2 days. Now we expect participants to sit in online for 2 days. It's not going to work because in the pandemic, they're sitting at home. But now they're sitting in the office for 2 days away from their work while still in office, which means that all their colleagues are going to talk to them thinking that they're still going to be working. So instead of 2 days, why not we cut it to 2 hours? We can lock ourselves in a room for 2 hours to learn. If I can change one thing, that will be the first thing I will change.
Okay, let's stay with that one. And what's the most exciting learning and development innovation you've seen recently?
The most exciting one will be the AI content creation. In the past, I will have to create everything on my own. If I want to do an e-learning module, I have to recreate everything. There are 2 options for trainer to create e-learning module. One, buy an existing e-learning module, change my training to suit that. Most trainers don't want. The other way is recreate everything based on the modules I have. But today, I can take everything that I have, put into AI. AI will create into e-learning that matches everything I have. And that's the most exciting. Because what it means to me is, I was about to share one of our secret trait. There's a lot of trainers when they meet clients, when they have their own book, clients feel like, oh, this guy wrote a book. And so we had a lot of trainers writing books. But if you think about it, how many people still buy books? What we have done is we realize the value of books. So we have written e-learning modules where participants, when they finish the e-learning module, they buy the e-learning module, they get the book. The book is not a primary, the e-learning module is. And what we have done with the book, because they're print on demand today, we have changed the titles of books and contents of books to suit the program that I am targeting. For example, I wrote a book called Neuroselling. It's hypnotic selling patterns, right? When I go and see a property developer, I will give them a copy of my book, Neuroselling, for property sales. And when I see a manufacturer, Neuroselling for construction materials, I'm still an authority as an author of a book, but my book is changed every time by AI and it's printed on demand. Just print 5 copies of it. You go up to a client. Most of the time, they have less than 5 people in the presentation, right? And 1 copy for each of them. And AI is amazing today.
And it's also case, like the examples are going to be more relevant. Everything feels more relevant. You don't have to think how to apply it to my context. Yeah, cool.
Just before this call today, I was speaking to one of our potential partners. They have an AI bot that will customize all the role plays for each and every scenario that we want. So we can feed it our own product, we can feed it our own objections, our own pricing point, our own personality, and it will then role play with every participant that we have. We can do it for sales, we can do it for leadership, we can do it for coaching, we can do it for client presentation.
I love it. So basically, you just need to understand first principle of your trade, like the main principle insights, and then you let AI do all the
Crafting.
Feeling of the example. That's great. Very cool. Maybe one last one. What other organizations are pushing the boundaries of what is possible in HR?
Organizations such as ministries, companies, or
companies, and ideally in Asia, if you know anyone in Asia that we should look up to in the learning and development side.
That's a good question. From a client perspective, I recently went to a client which is primarily an MNC. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to name them though, because of an NDA with the client. But maybe I can describe a little bit of what they are doing. They have something called a skip level meeting. Traditionally, in organizations, most employees don't really want to speak up against their supervisors. So even if they're not very happy, they may not say anything. And what happens is that will kind of fester and boil until it reaches a boiling point. The person will then resign and move on to another organization. With the Gen Zs today, the boiling point is a lot faster than with the baby boomers. Baby boomers can work in an organization 10, 20 years before they hit the boiling point. But the Gen Zs are like 10, 20 days, 10, 20 months, done. My boss don't like me, my boss don't care about me, my boss don't love me, my boss don't appreciate me, I'm out of here. So what this organization has done is that they have created something called a skip level, where your supervisor will go and speak to you on a regular basis to have a feel how your supervisor is working with you. So that has flattened the curve. flattened the organization, and it has allowed a better feel of how each level of organization, each level of people are. So the employees don't feel disconnected from the organization, because even if the supervisor is not appreciating them, they are getting appreciation and acknowledgement from the supervisor, right?
You can name us. We do that. You can name brioHR. We do that. Ben does that with my team, and he does that with other teams too.
Yeah. I think that's a very innovative way of doing things, at least for me. First time I'm hearing of that.
It's a bit uncomfortable for managers, I think, of our leaders, because you want to maintain that relationship and that hierarchy. Maybe you have a lack of control because you don't know what they speak about. I think it's great.
That's a very innovative and very good way of maintaining the employee morale.
Sounds good. Can you, just to finish, you have, first thing is, any books we should read? You spoke about a few that you customize. Are there non-customized book we can read from you?
My book, Neuro Selling, is going to be launched officially within the next 3 months. Yeah, I will say, buy the book.
Sounds good.
But like I mentioned earlier, we have decided not to sell it as a book. We're going to sell it as an e-course, e-learning course that comes with a book.
And then the last one, you have loads of experience. If you have one last piece of advice, let's say, I think there's an interesting angle with you. You know, when you talk with younger HR people, they are thinking about strategic HR, maybe leading HR teams. What would be your message to those guys who want to be in leading positions? So more strategy, maybe people management of the HR team. And then why learning and development you believe is a strategic thing? Because usually it can be subservient to the higher HR goals. And it's not really a leading function within HR, I believe. I might be wrong, but I believe it's serving the HR strategy, but usually it's not in the leadership seats. What are your recommendations for younger generations of HR wanting to rise to the top and with the L&D part?
2 things. Number one, I used to report to this lady, very strong iron lady. She taught me this thing. In every productivity, there is only 2 ways you can improve. The first way is improving your technology. So either automation, robotics, or systemization or systems. So you can improve your IT infrastructure, your technical infrastructure, or you can improve the people. So in every productivity, these are the 2 key pillars. You're either going to be investing a lot in automation, in robotics, and everything else, or you're going to invest in people. You cannot run away from these 2. If you have great robotics, you have people to run it. If you have great people, you still need a technology to run it. These 2 are the cornerstone of every productivity. And because of that, I believe HR is going to be very, very critical in every organization, in every nation building. Within HR, there is an administrative side, there is a compensation and benefit side, there is the people management side, and of course, there is the learning and development. Now, administration, of course, is very static, don't really require a lot of strategic thinking in administration work. Compensation and benefit requires a little bit more. Managing people, of course, requires a little bit more. But the key pillar in HR that is building up the capacity of the organization is the L&D. But the challenge with many L&D is that, especially the younger L&D, we take our role as an employee. That means we are very order takers. The organization have these needs. This is our checklist. We need to go and fulfill the checklist. My advice would be, take it more as if you are the academy for the organization, if you are the training provider for the organization, the internal training provider, what will you do to improve the productivity of your organization? What are the essential learning interventions, not just training, but the whole learning intervention, from the engagement, from the post-program engagement, pre-program engagement, from the follow-up, that you need to put in place for your organization to improve the productivity. L&D needs to take a more strategic role in that manner. That's my thought. I'll give you another example from call centers.
Just before you give the example, what you say is, don't take the wish list or the initial understanding of what needs to be done. Go back to the productivity problem or the objectives, the business objectives, in order to drive the program from the start.
Yeah, because like we were doing call centers, one of our clients, and their problem was language. I'll give you an example. We learn Mandarin in Malaysia, but we learn Malaysian version of Mandarin. If I'm working with Taiwan, Taiwan speaks a very different version of Mandarin. If I'm working in China, China speaks a very different version of Mandarin. How do I make sure my agents on the call is able to sound more like a Taiwanese or sound more like a Chinese? That cannot be trained. So what do? We make them listen to Taiwanese radios, Taiwanese channels and Taiwanese news. We make the Chinese agents listen to Chinese news and Chinese. When they immerse themselves in that environment, they're able to pick up the slang better. That is not a training intervention. It doesn't happen in a training room. That's what L&D needs to think about. How do I put my whole company, all the people there, into environments, into solutions, into interventions that helps the organizational productivity growth? Not just, I need to run 15 trainings this month. I need to run 18 programs this year. That should be how the young people need to think.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking so long with me.